against your actions. Heroes. Hello and welcome to Bonus Action Heroes Read RPG Reddit Stories. You can also listen to this in podcast format. Just search for Bonus Action Heroes wherever you get your podcasts. This week we have a couple of DMs telling their players how they should play their characters. The DM made a level up decision I don't like. Am I overreacting? This is from RD&D from user Raider Enjoyer 666. The entire session went great. There was no combat in this session at all. As the DM mentioned before we started, he wanted his session to be more roleplay oriented, and everybody was cool with that. We basically just made it through a giant maze of traps, and I had to help my team through a lot of it, or they would have just straight up died. Saved 2 people from falling into lava and instantly dying, and helped another pass a trial they otherwise wouldn't have, so I feel like I contributed a lot already at this point. We finished the last trial, the session is almost over, and the group is about to start leveling up for the next session. But before we do, the DM stops us and tells us we must guess who the traitor in the group is, or we go up 0 levels and the traitor goes up 2. This idea wouldn't be bad if we were at least warned about it in some way beforehand, but it felt very forced in, and there was absolutely no lead-up or indication of anyone being a traitor. I immediately guess who the traitor is by the very first person desperately pleading their innocence before anyone says anything. But no one else believed me, and the traitor ended up gaining the 2 levels and everyone else none. The traitor reveals they had no idea this was happening until 15 minutes before the session ended, because the DM texted them, "You're the traitor, don't tell anyone." And also the traitor is still on our team and adventuring like normal, and that whole thing was done for basically nothing. I told him that this ruling sucks and the whole thing seems kind of pointless, and he just ignored me basically. Kind of considering quitting the session, but I feel like that's an overreaction, but I don't want to be 2 levels behind someone else in that party, while also knowing that even if I contribute the most in terms of teamwork, it could ultimately lead to nothing. And the DM making up some BS mini-game to determine level ups instead of the actual game we're playing.
Well, if you want to play Blood on a Clock Tower or Werewolf, play that. I think that can be a really cool plot line, having someone who is an imposter in the group. But the fact that the person that was the imposter didn't know about it until 15 minutes before the end.
Why have they just shoehorned it in?
It's completely pointless.
They haven't had to roleplay hiding a secret or doing anything traitorous.
Exactly. So it's very easy to do. It's very easy to portray that you're not a traitor if you don't think you are.
I really like this comment. On the flip side, if the DM told me my character has been captured and replaced by a doppelganger, I'd be down to play along. And I think that's a really good idea and something we experienced in Icewind Dale with Tok being not a doppelganger, but being
possessed.
So
my character was a barbarian, a bit of a dumbass, let's be honest. I could have gone into that because the ghost that had possessed him was very high intelligence and just like played it perfectly and no one would have guessed. But I felt it was my duty to make little mistakes that gave away that I was possessed. Figure it out. It would have been easy just to play the perfect, act like I was Tok the whole time. That wouldn't have been any fun for anybody. I kept calling people like nicknames or, oh, hey, big guy and stuff like that. And not using names. And
it was the fact the barbarian wasn't rushing into combat that ended up being the giveaway, and was so clever because I think they were, what were they, a wizard or a...
Yeah, they were a wizard.
So they would never rush into combat.
They would never rush into combat. I went straight to the back.
See, that's smartly role-playing. Not a traitor, but that your character is not themselves. That I would reward. Maybe not with 2 levels up, but some inspiration,
Yeah, I talked about Gavin G. Smith's games before, so hi Gavin if you listen to this. And he did a storyline where I played a character, my character died, and he said, "Oh, well, this character is available, who's a doppelganger who has been ingrained in this kingdom for a very, very long time." And I was like, "Yes, brilliant." And I played that character like that, and then after a while, it kind of got revealed that I wasn't who I said I was, and I sort of changed my shape and stuff, and it became a really cool storyline and really fun for me because the GM kind of went, "Here's a little secret. You can use this ability to change shape when it suits you." And I did used to do that. And I think initially, before the players knew who I were, they thought, "Oh, he's a trickster cleric, so it's some kind of magic." It wasn't magic. It was only in one fight where I got knocked unconscious and I turned into this grey, bland-looking creature that they were like, "Okay, that's not magic." this isn't who we think it is. And it created some cool role play. It was really fun to play. It wasn't just
In other words, this could have been done so much better.
This could have been amazing. It could have been incredible. But no, it felt like a mechanic that didn't really have any basis in the story. And don't get me started on people being different levels. That was very common.
I want to get you started on it. That's why I picked this question.
It was very common in old school D&D. In the early days, you would play a game and your character would die, and you'd usually start at a lower level and then you'd have to catch up. It was quite common in games to punish you for getting killed, which is kind of a bit crappy if you think about it, because you've already been killed, which should be punishment enough. In something like D&D, which is especially hard as you get higher to balance the combats, right? You and I, how much time do we spend talking about balancing a combat and whether it's going to be too much or too little, and how do we make it a challenge without making it horrendous? But I think as soon as you get more than one level out, 5th edition becomes really messy. I've played it in a game, as you know, recently, that is an in-person game, and I do really, really enjoy it. But at one point I was 3 or 4 levels lower than the highest level character, and I was a combat character. So every combat just felt like punishment because I was well out of my league. I was constantly nearly dead. I was always out of everything. That whole situation sucks for me. I think the GM's had a cool idea and completely botched it. And he's probably spoiled everyone's fun, except for the player who was a traitor who really got rewarded for no reason.
One of the comments says, I'm more bothered by the DM deciding that one of the PCs is a traitor. If you have a story to tell that requires characters to behave in a specific way, write a book instead. There's nothing collaborative about this. And I agree, the idea of, even if they had told them 15 minutes before the session, never mind the end of the game, that they wanted them to play a traitor, I would expect that player to say yes or no, to want to buy into playing the game that way. They had no say in that. They just had to accept what was texted to them.
Yeah, and then that GM has created a PvP situation. And we generally try to avoid PvP in our games. I know some people say it's on the cards. It creates a different game and a different set of expectations. I suspect that GM has seen a TikTok, and I saw it recently. There's a guy that says, like, keep toxic or whatever it is, and he will like text all the players and say, you are not the doppelganger, but text that to all of them, for example. And that's quite funny, and it's quite a nice joke. You are not the traitor, just to spread paranoia. Can be done, but you've got to really think about it. Don't just drop it in.
The update. I sent my DM this thread. He said he didn't agree with any Reddit D&D nerds, and the levels thing only matters if you're just salty you aren't the highest level. It's not that big of a difference, honestly, and that it's your fault. You couldn't convince everyone to believe you. Sounds like a skill issue. And then when I told him it's not something I'd really want to be part of, he said we should all vote on it as a group. The group we are playing with has 2 people he's known for 6+ years that I just met. So that's just kind of an awkward situation I'd rather not be part of. I told him this and that I'd be down for next session, probably, if this wasn't going to be an issue next game, and he hung up on me. The DM is a good friend of mine, but he seems very upset I'm not willing to just stick it out, even though he knows I agree with none of what happened, and have mentioned to him in the past that I do not like playing a campaign where people are different levels, and I feel he did it again this session just to spite me, and got mad when I didn't go along with it. He literally just sees it as me whining and bitching, so I'd rather not be a part of it. He may have even been able to convince me to stay, but he literally hung up on me when I mentioned I might not be playing anymore.
That GM is not considering his players in any of his decisions, and the fact that he had a strop when you tried to have a conversation about the fact that you didn't enjoy it, instead of taking that on board and saying, okay, you don't enjoy that, I won't do that again. He's just doubled down, got defensive, had an emotional reaction. I mean, maybe he'll calm down, but I think that game's maybe run its course.
For that player, yeah.
For that player, I don't think I would want to go back. Everyone always says no D&D is better than bad D&D. You can learn a lot from bad D&D, but it's not fun.
This is from our D&D and user Alundir. I'm asking this because I'm relatively new to D&D, and my few ongoing campaigns are my first ones as a player. In one of them, I'm playing a Dragons of Ice Spire Peak module. We ran into a dwarf on a carriage on Tribal Trail. As we passed by, we heard women voices in carriage and sensed some magic inside. Grammar! As an all-good aligned party, we decided to investigate. Dwarf was suspicious and started to run away, so we chased it with horses. I was a druid horse. Everyone tried to stop the wagon. One of us jumped on top of it, but couldn't open the lock of the wagon door. As a chaotic, good, wild-shaped horse druid, I ran in front of the wagon and slowed myself gradually to stop it peacefully. It didn't work. Then I ran next to the wagon horse, tried to calm and slow the horse down with animal handling. Rolled 22, but still didn't work. Then, hoping to slow or stop the wagon, I cast Entangle. The horse tripped, the wagon was destroyed, and everyone in it died. After the incident, the group came to me saying that I killed them. Defended myself, explained my reasoning, but after the game, DM told me that I am no longer chaotic good, but neutral. Feeling extremely bummed right now. I feel like I'm the asshole of the group for arguing against it.
I don't see how a well-intentioned but misguided use of something changes your alignment.
No, neither do I.
I mean, alignment pretty much is useless. I think D&D's moved to a much more nuanced place, and I don't know about you, but I ignore it.
Well, I generally ignore it, except for in Curse of Strahd. The dark powers can corrupt you, but some of them do change your alignment to evil. I have included that in my game, but only on a 3-strike system, essentially, where the dark power goes, here's a little taste of evil. Do you like it? Okay. That was the first taste. Here's the second. It was good, wasn't it? You want more? You want more, yeah. Here's the third.
You're an evil
I
dealer.
feel like we're on the same page now. So we're gonna go full evil. Are you okay with that? Yeah. So there's consent over 3 stages before I say you're gonna have to play them evil now. That is the consequence of this huge boon that you're getting.
I've played a lot of D&D over the years, and the original D&D that I played, alignment was very key. And yes, you could change, you could turn evil. The monk that I'm talking about, when he became, this was the 3rd edition, when he became undead, the GM, and then back then it was very common, the GM was like, well, you were lawful, I was lawful neutral, I think, as a monk. I became lawful evil. But I think the thing with alignment changes is not every player can get their head around it, and not every player can be trusted to go evil, because a lot of people's idea of evil is a bit cartoon villain, and it's just being chaos and just being disruptive and just being evil. And I put a lot of thought when my character went evil. I was like, what does that actually mean? And I remember thinking, well, he still wants the same things. He still wants his friends to be okay. He still wants to beat the bad guy. He still wants to put things right. The only thing that's really changed is he's dead now, so his perspective is different. And he might, and I just played it that in situations where I might have previously knocked someone out, I might go a bit too far and not take them alive. It's only useful if a player doesn't really understand how to play the character, and they want a little hook that gives them a filter to role play through.
It's a tool for the players. Like, as a DM, I don't know what your alignments are and don't really care as long as they're not evil, because as you said, it's generally that's just going to bring disruption to the party. I think at one point Hazel came to me and said, can I change my alignment for Alessandro from, I can't remember if it was neutral to good or good to neutral. Either way, it was because they had been shaped by the things that they had experienced, and they felt they had a different outlook now. And I guess they were just doing the good thing and saying, hey, DM, this feels right now. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course.
Well, that player is not going to change the way they play that character. So what, I mean, one, I wouldn't worry about it unless the GM is the kind of, again, like the earlier example, well, that's not what your character would do. Again, you're taking away agency of the players. Just don't. Roleplay feeling guilty. Roleplay the guilt of that mistake that you thought this would help, and actually it's killed people. It's a great roleplay opportunity there. It doesn't need a forced alignment change.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the GM could say, oh, well, maybe ever think about how your character's going to feel about this. You did something and people have died.
Yeah, in roleplay, just explain, I was trying to do good. I was trying to help. Maybe, I don't know where they are roleplay-wise. Maybe they're not a roleplay heavy group, so the actions speak more for them. There's some people pointing out that rolling a 22 animal handling, it would, for a level 3 party, would calm the horse down. There's
Yeah.
someone else pointing out that the physics from Entangle don't work like that either. The radius of Entangle stops everything. No super flip. Restrained doesn't trip, it merely stops movement.
This is why it's important to read a spell description really carefully when you cast it, isn't it? Because
It's
often
hard. It's hard.
it is hard.
There's a lot of spells to learn, and you want to keep the pace moving.
You do.
I've definitely got rulings wrong before. I don't know if that spoils the immersion of the game, but I don't want to get it wrong and ruin things for players. So I think in my games, if I'm unsure, I do vocalize it and say, "What are your opinions?" And wait, let me
Talk
just look
about it.
this up before I make a ruling on it.
Yeah, because I don't think the player killed those characters. The GM did. The GM's gone for the most extreme punishing version of what happens.
So why punish them more?
Yeah, exactly. So I've punished you with a bad call, and then I'm going to punish you again because my bad call killed characters. It's
And
like,
they were working really hard to try and find a way to resolve the situation. Like, when I put
yeah,
a problem in front of my players, I get really excited by them coming up with ways to resolve it that I hadn't thought of. I would want to reward that personally.
I've played in games where we talk about yes and sometimes it's important to say no but, to keep the story moving. Not everything should, you don't just agree with everything. But I have been in games where the GM's first reaction is no to everything, and it's disempowering to the player. It makes it feel like the only thing that's going to work is whatever the GM's got in their head. It feels punishment. It feels like punishment. It takes away agency. It's just not a good approach. So I agree with the comments. I think this player just tried to do a thing, and this is an interesting one because it triggers a lot of my memories of my aphantasia from early games where I would make a decision based on what I perceived the situation to be, and these were usually in theatre of the mind games. And the GM, who, as far as I'm aware, didn't have aphantasia, I don't think any of them did, would have a completely different mental image of what was happening. So I would often get surprised or make a mistake, incorrect decision, cause problems, a bit like this player has of that.
For people that don't know, what is aphantasia, Matt?
Aphantasia is basically the lack of a mind's eye. So it's either complete lack of ability to visualize or very poor visualization.
Last comment. It's a much longer comment than this, but I think this statement just puts it well. Alignment is about intention, not outcome.
Perfect.
Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You can also join the live chat on Twitch at Bonus Action Heroes. If you want to suggest Reddit stories to cover, please comment below or join our Discord linked in the description.